Vidal, head of firm success with Decile Group. And it's super exciting to be here today, guys, because, basically this is our first time we have an open session for Decile Partners. That is our firm success offering, and I'm going to enter into details in a second. So I'm very happy to have all of you here. I can see a huge number of participants, so this is super exciting. The way we're going to organize this session, it's very simple. We're going to divide this in two parts. First half, I will be explaining our offering, Decile Partners, in detail. And then the second part of it, we will dedicate it to answer your questions. I have kind of like an AMA. You can just, very simple, drop a question on the chat. I can see, Praveen, just, message everyone. Good afternoon to you too, Praveen. So just post your questions in the QA in the chat. We will be able to collect all of them, and then at the end of the session, we will go through one by one. Also, we will give you the option to discuss. So let me just get to it right away to make sure we don't waste too much time. I'm going to share my screen so that everybody can see that. So I think you guys can now see my screen. Let me just get to it. So Decile Partners, it is our firm success offering. As you know, we have a significant focus on firm success. As you will see, Decile Partners is not a standard fan admin offering. We're not focused on service only. We're really focused on your success. We want you to build a top decile venture capital firm. So the reason why we came to this conclusion, and the reason why I decided to basically build an offering like this one, this comes from the early days when Adeo Resi and Mike Supravici, that they were the founders of this, all this project. They launched, an accelerator program for venture capital, as you all know, Decile. And they realized that in the early days, in the first initial cohorts 1 to 3, there were so many problems. So many fund managers were struggling and failing because many of the issues that you can see listed in this slide, You had, a lot of unknown problems. They were reaching out to vendors that they were not really understanding venture capital. They were making mistakes. You don't know what you don't know. And sometimes you think, making a decision that you can revert in the future, and you cannot. And that's going to cost you a lot of money. And also there will be a significant amount of ethical dilemmas. Sometimes we make choices, but we're not really seeing the consequences or the impact that they may have, and you need someone that can guide you to really make the right choices. So that's why we decided to create Decile Partners. We brought on board the best of the best. Here you will have access to experts in all areas that are required to your success, to the success of a venture capital firm, and you will have access to them. This will not be done impersonally, or people that you see on one slide and you never see them again. This is people that you will be working hand in hand, along the entire journey of your fund management. So if you need any questions related to, legal implications, you would have someone like, Hans Kim, super senior counsel, that will be able to guide you and show you the implications. Also, if you want to understand better your numbers, you have, a team led by Rob Del Pret, that is, he was one of the founding members at Cara. So you can see that it's people that they really understand this space. They are extremely good experts. And not only that, they're your partners. They're working with you. You will have again, support from all the areas that you might need. But on top of that, of course, you need other kind of vendors, other kind of partners that will help you more specifically. So you need legal firm, you need a tax firm, you need banking. We have been selecting and making sure that we bring to you the best quality out there, but also something very important: people that understand this space, that understand venture capital, that also understands new and emerging managers, because needs to understand the economics of it, and what you will be getting with the vendors that we're offering here. And again, we can always work with other vendors, but this is the set that we have been selecting during these years is top quality at a very, very reasonable price. And that will help you not only to simplify your operation, but also find a way to speed up decisions and get into the important things that are going to make difference in your fund. We work in multiple domiciles, and the reason why we just work on these domiciles, it is because they're optimized for venture capital. We know that these domiciles are the best ones to actually, help your fund succeed. Delaware, it's the domicile. Of course, there are like some cases where we also may suggest and understand that Ontario in Canada could also be a good alternative. And then in some other cases as well, BVI could be another option. But as said, this is a question of what we know works, where we know it's optimized for venture capital, for taxes, and will help you move on into building an enduring firm. We're not doing this just for one shot and just get one fund and that's it. It's just a process where we want you to have a long journey in venture capital and a successful one. In terms of like building the next gen of venture capital, that is something that we are doing with Decile Lab. Decile Lab is an accelerator that is basically helping, fund managers from all over the world to actually have access to venture capital and understand how they should build a venture capital firm. So we realized that in order to help this new generation, next generation of venture capital fund managers, we also had to develop an operation that was aligned with those principles. The first principle that I've mentioned a few times is firm success. It's about success. It's not about service. It's not about checking the boxes and making sure that you have what you need for funding. It's way beyond that. When we're talking about firm success, we're talking about solving your needs in terms of operations. We have playbooks that have been developed based on our experience and understanding of this space that will help you, follow a step-by-step process to solve almost any issue related to your operations, fundraising, operations itself, reporting, team, finances, investment, you name it. We have playbooks that we will be providing you with, and our team also guiding you to make sure that you are able to solve and develop success in any of these areas. On top of that, you will also have the support of our advisory team and mentors and coaches that they are like world-class experts, people that will be helping you with business decisions, helping you with a strategy, helping you to understand the implications of certain minor decisions during the formation process that have a great impact later on. So you will have access to all these experts and work with them to really find the best solutions that work best for your specific case. Investments. It's not only that we help you, or we will help you organize and structure and have a proper flow of your investments. It is that we will also guide you and advise you on what investments makes more sense and which ones they have terms that may not be beneficial for you right now or in the future. Sometimes you look at a safe and they may tell you it's a vanilla YC safe, but it's not. And there are special changes, tweaks here and there that will open the door for issues, and we will flag it for you. And we will help you understand what are the implications and also ways that you can use to renegotiate with your startups, your portcos, to get into terms that really make sense for everyone. So we will help you big time with investments. We will also help you with talent. There is an initiative that is called Venture Institute, where we definitely are bringing talent from all over the world into this class, into venture capital. And you will have access to also to that talent. I will explain that later on more in detail. And fundraising. This is, of course, the holy grail of everything we do. We really understand that for you, fundraising is critical. We will help you. We will help you. And it's not only that we will help you with the process, what you need to do with guidance. We are also developing an initiative that is called LP Institute, where we're educating the next generation of investors, of limited partners in this class. And you will have access to those limited partners, and the best firms in Decile Partners will have access to LPs from LP Institute that they understand, venture capital, and they understand new and emerging managers, because we have been explaining them how this class works, and they have a true interest in investing in this class. Just as an example, right now, we have more than $350 million of, interest in investing in this class from the current, participants in LP Institute. The second principle is that this had to be ultra safe for LPs. We really understand that, many times you are going to be facing LPs that is the first time that they invest in this class. So we needed to create really a very high level quality of operation. This is what we call institutional grade. And this is why it's so important. Your LPs will be investing in your funds the same way, with the same peace of mind that they would do investing in Sequoia. So what we wanted to make sure is that your operation end to end was absolutely perfect. So from legal, compliance, treasury, and accounting, all that you need, all the different elements, and also what you don't need, because sometimes some people may be asking for certain things that they are not actually required. We will help you explain them why that is not required. But this is the gold standard of fund admin in venture capital, and we deliver that to you. And we want to make sure that you also understand that in the market, other options, they will never provide you with this level of, with this scope of service, not even close. They will be just providing parts of this. But if you want to have this level of institutional grade service, this is Decile Partners. Proactive, another critical element. Again, we are about success. We're not about giving you just service. It's way beyond that. So in order to build your success and work for your success, we have to be proactive. Every single week, and many times daily, we check where you are. When you work with Decile Partners, we are checking all the time how you're doing, how you're performing, which are your struggles, what are the areas where you can do better, or also where where you're excelling, so that we can even learn and then help others, using you as a benchmark. So this is a community for success, built for success. But the important thing here is that we work to, if you were unstable, our goal is to bring you to excelling. And if you're excelling, our goal is to bring you to the class that we call Decile Capital. We have our own fund of funds that invests in the best firms in Decile Partners. So we want you to get there. So our goal is to make sure that any firm in Decile Partners get to that tier. And in order to do that, we review these on daily, weekly basis. Then we identify needs, and then we call what we call office hours to meet with you. So we will call you and say, hey, why don't we have office hours with this expert? We're seeing that you are having difficulties in this area. We have a playbook. We have a plan. We have some suggestions. We'd like you to meet with this person and help you solve that specific issue, so that you can then keep going and focus and master at your craft to actually become a super successful fund manager. But again, building enduring firms. We want you to also be ready for the next Fund 2 and Fund 3. In order to do that, you can't manage all these areas with different vendors, different systems, in different, with different people. Some they're good, some they're not that good. All that is unmanageable. So we knew that this had to be totally integrated. It had to be one single point of contact. So normally you have legal, fund admin, legal ops, treasury, strategy, and all of these, they're siloed. You would go and have a vendor that helps you here. You would have a venture partner that helps you with the strategy. Then you would have someone that helps you with fund admin and legal counsel. All of that is siloed. And issues and problems, they're liquid. They permeate the entire organization. It doesn't get siloed on one single area. They start flowing around all the different areas of the operation. That is why we have a holistic approach and view on this kind of operation, and we have a full integration of all these areas. You will be talking to one person and solving all the different implications. So the issue that you're having that may be touching 1, 2, 3 different areas, we will have all the experts and come up with a joint solution that is also considering all the implications on all the different areas. That is the way we manage, our entire operation. So other options out there, For example, Kara, you could be having like, solutions for accounting. Yes, you have that. Maybe, some solutions for distributions, filings. But where is the risk? You're going to have the risk probably in compliance. Have you run KYC and AML in your LPs? Are you sure that those LPs can be accepted into the fund? Those are the issues. Those are the problems with treasury, with banks. Those are the places where you may have like, big issues. And if they're not considered within the entire operation, that is where the risk is. We take care of all of that. We make sure that everything is absolutely integrated and connected. So that's why it's super important that you understand that the way we work, it's end-to-end and fully integrated. Also, this comes with a tech solution. We work with Decile Hub. As some of you know, Decile Hub is our SaaS solution for fan admin, and it's becoming the gold standard in fan admin. Honestly, all that I just explained, think of it, with a tech-based solution, and that is Decile Hub. So all the different areas, strategy, legal compliance, treasury, accounting, they're integrated in Decile Hub. We work through Decile Hub with you, and we will also train you to use Decile Hub so that you can get the most of the tool and be able to manage all these different areas through this solution. And all of this, of course, as first principles, had to be managed in a reasonable way, because we understand that you are new and emerging managers, and finding a good solution that could make it this viable, it was critical. So that's why we work hard to try to find a way to simplify all this reality. The reality for many of you is that you go and talk to a legal firm, and forming your firms is going to be easy, between 50 to 150K, depending on how complex you make it, depending on the amount of entities, depending on all the complexity you add to it. And many times, many vendors, they are not going to stop you in making things complicated. Because, they just bill you for that. That's it. We don't. We will tell you, don't do that. That's not good for you. We will tell you that's not needed. You don't need that. We will give you all that you need in a very simple process that helps streamline the entire approach. And that will reduce costs and help us get into a much more affordable and competitive solution. But on top of that, you will have to pay fan admin, that is 30 to 50K, then legal ops that you have to add another 10K, treasury probably another 5 to 10K, and then strategy, you bring like 2-3 venture partners that will help you with the strategy, and you will have to give away 1 to 3% of your carry. Where we came up is with a solution that could bring this all into a one single flat fee. Super easy. You pay 50K for your organizational expenses, and always keep in mind these are fund expenses. These are paid by the fund. It's not out of your pocket. It's paid by the fund. So you pay 50K, 45K of that will be due on closing. So we will not be collecting this upfront or anything like that. We will be collecting 45K of that the day that you reach a first close. When you reach a first close and the money is hitting your account, that is when we will be collecting together, with your management fees and all that you need for your first close. But we will be collecting the formation expenses. That this will be this 45K remaining of the total 50K. And then when we reach that first close, the ongoing operation, it will be a 25K annual fan expense. That is, let's say, our standard initial, fee. Of course, as you grow and you will get more, complex, the operation, of course, you will be adding more to it. So that's why, the initial, tier will be 25K, and then later, as you grow, this will be growing. But again, as you can see, this simplifies entirely versus what we saw before. And finally, something critical, we are your partners. That's why we will be working with you to make your fund successful. And that implies a 1% of the 20% of your current interest. So if you compare with the chart that I just showed before, you can see how competitive and significantly simple this approach is. Finally, as I mentioned, we will have different tiers. So as you grow, that implies more complexity. That implies, more closings, more LPs. You will be reaching, much more complicated and complex LPs. You will be reaching institutional grade LPs. You will need like different support, maybe reporting. All that will imply an increase in your fund expenses on annual basis, and we will have a tier 40K for funds between 5 to 15 million. And if you then are successful, and that is what we all want, that is where we want you to be, you will be in the 60K rate. But again, this will be aligned with your success and aligned with your economics. So this is doable and this is feasible. And we know that. That is why we do it this way. Now, in terms of understanding how this works, if, let's say, you decide to apply, because this is a program where you need to apply, we want to make sure there is an alignment for both sides on what we're doing and what we're building. And we want to make sure that we're the right solution for you, and that also you are ready for what we want to work and do with you. Once you apply and you're accepted, let's say as of day one, you will start in what we call Decile Launch. And this is like a closing program. It's a program that will help you get to a first close. This is a program fully dedicated to help you forget about all the other things and just make sure we get the fundraising done. We start working with the European agreements. We have everything ready in order to get you to form your entities and get you to a first close. And once you're closed, then it will be the ongoing support from Decile Partners that we have been mentioning before. So more in detail, if you think about, Decile Launch as a strategy information, the month one will be about making sure we build LP momentum, that we organize the team. We are going to start planning the close. We're going to review the agreements, prepare deals, validate those decisions. And then in the month two, where we see that everything is getting ready to actually get to a first close, we're going to finalize the cap tables, form the entities, prepare the LPs, because they will need to sign the LPA and also be ready for a capital call. So we will be also guiding you through that entire process, set up your bank accounts, close on capital, and then prepare your filings. Once that is done and you reach a first close, that is when we become more of your ongoing partner, where we're going to be helping you in all the areas that I've mentioned before. So think about weekly, fund accounting. You're going to have like regular monthly check-ins. You're going to have like, deal review support that we discussed before. You will be engaging with fund experts. You will have playbooks. We will help you with reports and newsletter, what needs to be said and when. And we will help you, of course, complete your annual filings and assist with taxes. All this is built in a system where in one end, we will help you with investments. We will make sure that you have a team that will help you review your term sheets, your memos, make sure that they are like in the right place and that you have high quality investments. Because again, as I mentioned before, this is not only about service, this is about success. We will also offer you the option to syndicate some of those investments and make them available to other firms that we know that they are also very solid because they are Decile Partners. For example, recently we saw a firm that was about to make an investment in quantum computing, and that deal required some level of technical knowledge, and another fund manager was an expert on that field, so they could work together on actual developing that diligence and taking it to the next level. And of course, deal sourcing help you how you can get better deals and high quality deals. But that is on the investment side. Also, we will help you with talent. We have Venture Institute that I explained, where we will be providing you with a resident, for 8 weeks, where they will be helping you in certain areas of your fund management. But also, if you're going to be adding team members into your fund, we will help you in that process, in the entire process. And the same thing with fundraising, that, as you know, is the key and the holy grail of everything we do. So what we're doing is, as I mentioned, LP Institute, educating LPs to invest in this class and make sure that they can understand the specifics of this class and have an appetite for it. So you will not be facing someone that is going to be asking things that they mean that they're not understanding the class. They will really understand why they should invest and why this is an opportunity. Also, we will be helping you to discover LPs, and we have like a specific center of excellence that will be helping you on, enriching your list and getting you additional leads that could, be interesting for you to meet. And of course, helping you on the entire diligence process. And as you know, and as I mentioned before, we also have Decile Capital, our fund of funds, and this will be part of that process as well. So understanding how you can get ready to become one day a Decile Capital firm. What is our roadmap? Definitely Capital Network. We're really focused on improving and making things better on that end. We want to help with new tools, and the LP Institute, it's definitely an area where we're like growing, and this is a big success, and it's gonna allow many capital to reach new and emerging managers in the right conditions and understanding these classes. Investment syndication, we're also going to automate this process. As I mentioned before, that's something that we're doing already. We're like facilitating that kind of like interaction between fund managers where they can share deals and they can talk about these opportunities and they can share, diligence processes, how they work. But we want this to be automated, and we're working on technology to make this happen in a better and faster manner. And then the centers of excellence. As we have centers of excellence for LPs. We have centers of excellence for enduring firms. We want you to build an enduring firm. So we want you to have access to people that have done that in the past and will guide you to understand exactly what is critical when you need to work to build an enduring firm. We will have, pitching, centers of excellence, a deal review. So there will be like different areas where we will be helping you, and we will be working to improve those in the near future. And as I mentioned before, this is an application-only program. We want to make sure that, expectations are aligned, that we're both aligned that on the success that you and us want for you. We want you to build, and we want to work with you to build enduring firms. This is not a one-off. This is not like something that I can do a side gig, just because, I'm bored and I want to try something else. This is something that is like a life decision. This is like, I want to dedicate the next 20 years of my life to this endeavor and build a fund 2, a fund 3, and do it in the right way. Do it this institutional grade that we discussed before. And again, with this ambition to become top decile, to become the best of the best. And if we see that there is alignment, and if we see that, we got what you guys are looking for, and that you guys have the same level of ambition that we do, definitely, we're a great match, and that is the beginning of a great journey. And this journey has been started by many fund managers right now. We are managing at this point more than 70 firms. And these firms, they gave us a 94 NPS. And any of you that were familiar on how NPS works, I don't need to explain to you what this number means. This is unbelievable. This is super, super positive NPS. This means that we are really not only meeting but exceeding the expectations of all the firms that they are working with us. We have helped more than 140 investments, and those already got more than 40 markups. So you can see that this works, and we definitely work. You would love to work with you and be our next firm. So let me just stop sharing. There's been like a ton of questions I saw in the chat, and the Q&A is very exciting. I'm very happy to see also that Mike was able to join us. So and we can then move into the Q&A. What do you think, Mike?
Hey, yeah, let's do it. Hey, everyone. Good to see you all. If this is your first time joining one of these webinars with you and haven't seen my face, my name is Mike Supervici. I'm the head of acceleration here at Decile Group. I'm also a co-founder, kind of like started a lot of these initiatives from the ground up. And so myself, Pablo, and Matt, we work together very, very closely, and I'm happy to sort of answer any sort of questions you have. Also, we typically don't look at the chat. So if you have questions for us, put them into the Q&A. There's like a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. I see there's already 17 questions in there, and upvote them. There's like a little thumbs up button there. We'll basically go ahead and sort of prioritize those questions. I guess the one thing I would sort of say here is there's a kind of final thing before we go into questions. Look, one of the issues that we saw so VC Lab, for those of you that know, we've launched 400 venture capital firms over the last 2.5 years. One of the biggest issues that we saw is that most of the operations and the vendors and everything that was sort of available for the community that we were running was just super suboptimal. And because of that, a lot of these funds became incredibly risky for LPs to sort of invest in, because they made a lot of like bad decisions and things like that. So we try to build an offering, and like we do everything else. I see there's some familiar faces. Some of you are already kind of enrolled in cohort 14, maybe even some cohort 13. We build everything with the community rather than for the community. So all of this thinking has been sort of influenced from the bottom up by the community. So just hopefully that kind of gives you a little bit more context here. Okay. There's a question here from Daniel. What is the minimum fund size which would be feasible for considering all legal admin, legal steps requirements? So if you're building an enduring VC firm, and again, as Pablo mentioned, this isn't for folks that kind of want to just experiment with the fund. Maximum respect if that's what you want to do. This is for people that want to launch a VC firm, okay? Like you're founders of firms, right? So if you're doing that, then every 2 to 3 years, you're launching a new fund. So it's okay for the first fund to be smaller, and it usually should be smaller. And for those of you that are in the VC Lab cohort, you're already kind of hearing this in the AMAs. We're like really actually trying to drive down the first fund size, because that's going to help you get oversubscribed and be much more successful in raising fund two. But generally, the technical limit to where venture capital is an asset class, forget admin and all the costs. Just in general, $2.5 million is usually the smallest fund that you can run properly. Because just if you forget like the fund admin, just your management fees just stop working, right? Like you're like taking 20% of a $2.5 million fund in management fees. Like how much do you really have left over? So generally, you can't really start a venture capital fund unless you're able to basically close on at least $2.5 million, and ideally try to get closer to like to that extent. And there's like a couple related questions here, and there's several questions regarding like sort of like the organizational expense from Decile, and there's other questions regarding this as well. So everybody, if you're not really familiar with the terms fund expenses and organizational expenses, read this article that I'm about to put in the chat for you, because there's a lot of confusion about this in the market, okay? So as a venture capital firm, you have two types of expenses that are paid for by the fund, okay? So organizational expenses, which are like your setup and legal. So in your case here, Decile, the 45K or whatever, that's not paid by you. That doesn't come out of your pocket. It's basically your LPs that pay for that, all right? And then there's a set of ongoing expenses that you're going to have basically every single year for the next 10 years. Those are called fund expenses, okay? And generally fund operations, which includes administration, compliance, legal, all the stuff, a lot of that generally qualifies as a fund expense. And what we've done here is that we've basically built a little chart for you to sort of figure out kind of where and what is actually a fund expense, what is not a fund expense, what can you actually charge back to the fund. So as a general rule, that's how this whole thing works, right? It's not going to be paid for by you, by the fund. That's why you need to get to a pretty good, healthy first closing of at least $1 million, usually $1.5 million in order for you to be able to pay for your organization expenses and make a few investments and take some management fees. So hopefully that answered all your questions there. What do you mean by, Pablo, do you mind if I just take these?
100%.
What do you mean by playbooks more specifically, like playbooks for fundraising? As Pablo mentioned, look, we've launched 400, maybe slightly over 400 VC firms, and we've been powering and managing over 70 firms like day to day, okay? And because of this, we've realized things that work, things that don't work, conflicts of interest, all sorts of stuff, like mistakes that people make fundraising, mistakes that people make with deals. I mean, just the institutional knowledge that we've seen, it's pretty profound. And many of these mistakes or many of these challenges or many of these issues that people have, we've been able to sort of build playbooks for dealing with them very proactively, right? So the way most of this world outside of Decile Partners works is that you sort of have a bunch of like reactive vendors that don't talk to each other, essentially, right? And then there's a problem, and then the vendor reacts, and then you try to solve it. What we've tried to do is, because that's obviously a pain and very costly and all this other stuff, is try to like anticipate issues as they come up, right? And so we sort of can see, because again, we talk to the funds every single week, we know exactly what issues may or may not come up. And so we have playbooks, which are generally like a week or 2 week kind of sprint, do this, this, and that. And we're able to sort of help the manager, get over the potential issues that they have. Oftentimes there's an expert associated. Oftentimes there's a center of excellence associated to that playbook. And that's what we do to sort of help people sort of navigate this kind of firm building experience that they have. So hopefully that answers your question there. Do you guys have best of breed operating agreements for the fund management company, Delaware? Yeah, we basically rebuilt all the agreements from first principles. Most of the legal agreements, and there's also a question about like using your own lawyer and stuff like that. Most of the legal agreements in this industry are terrible. Okay, basically the way law firms work is that they essentially hold GPs hostage, right? Because they'll slam you with this like 200 to 300 page legal document that basically talks about every single issue that could potentially go wrong, and you don't understand it because you don't understand legal ease, right? And so the only way you can sort of get a question answered is if you basically call the law firm and they'll charge you like $1,000 an hour, right? It's just generally the way this world works. And because of that, because these legal agreements are so complicated, when you give the LP the legal agreement to sign, okay, now they're just as overwhelmed as you are with 200 pages of legalese. So guess what they do? They get their lawyer involved. So now there's like their lawyer versus your lawyers negotiating. And guess what's going to happen, right? It's like your costs go up, their costs go up. It is just an absolute nightmare, right? So we basically rebuilt all the legal agreements from first principles. And you can look this up, take a look at like Cornerstone LPA, and as just as a sense of that. And what we did is we brought all the terms to the first 3 pages. So everybody sort of knows these are the terms, this is what I'm coming in at, there's all this stuff. And then we made it so it's really easy to understand for limited partners. So as a result of that, thousands and thousands of LPs have subscribed to Decile Partner funds on these agreements without having to like hire lawyers and do all this kind of funky mumbo jumbo. So yes, as part of the Decile Launch program that Pablo talked about, we basically build the operating agreements for the ManCo, the GP, and you're gonna have to make a lot of decisions there, right? Like, how do you think about venture partners, all this other stuff? And this is another issue with these law firms, right? It's like they'll quote you, quote unquote, a flat rate, but then you ask them, does this include 3 entities? No. Does this include, all your venture partner agreements? No, you didn't tell me about that. Does this include thinking through conflict of interest? No, right? So like all these issues, again, and we learned this the hard way, right? We learned this by seeing what was happening in our community. That's how I know so much about this. It's not like, oh, like we thought it was a great opportunity or something, right? It's just like we saw it, all of our partner funds struggle with this. So we basically built the infrastructure to kind of help you through it, right? So you have all the support, people answer your questions, helping you make these business decisions and things like that. So hopefully that was helpful.
Mike, just a quick question on compliance. I have here one question from Thierry that I think is good if you cover, that says, re-compliance, when we bring in new LPs, are you doing the screening of the LPs to sanction lists like OFAC, UN, US ones?
Yes, and this is again another issue with pretty much like no fund admin provider does this. Like like you go to like a Carta or something, they don't have that. This doesn't even come. So what ends up happening is that most new managers don't even do KYC or an AML in their LPs. So we saw this, we thought it was super risky, and then it would made it really hard for us to make introductions to LPs. It's like if I don't even know if this fund is run properly, right? So basically we built out an entire KYC AML operation. So we do KYC and AML on you, we do KYC and AML on all of your LPs that come in, and then we also look for OFAC and things related, because especially these days with sanctions, there's serious issues with you basically taking an LP from like a country that's been sanctioned, right? Because then, OFAC does these screenings after those, and they can come in and just basically shut down your bank account, and now your LP's money is trapped until you sort of sort this out. And good luck trying to sort this out with OFAC, right? So we prevent all of these issues. So basically the way a closing happens, just in case that you're sort of new to this, again, I see cohort 14 folks here, so this is kind of maybe more educational. LP signs the limited partner agreement, okay? Then you do all the KYC, AML checks, OFACs, and all these issues. And then if there's a problem, you sort of solve that beforehand, which usually means not admitting the LP into the fund. If you sign and countersign these agreements and you'll admit the LP into the fund, now you're in a lot of trouble, right? And so we basically try to prevent these issues from happening before the LP is, accepted into the fund, right? And so that's all part of the safety kind of layer that we're trying to kind of give for the whole industry, right? For the LPs coming into your fund, for us helping you and all that stuff. Pablo, do you want to maybe?
Yes, yeah. Another
questions?
question. That Wall was asking, is 45K organizational expense one time?
Yes, exactly. So organizational expenses happen one time. Basically, what they mean is these are like your setup costs. So you essentially do a first close, okay, and you take you do a capital call on that first close, typically 25%. So let's say you do a first close of $2 million, you do 25%, that's 500K. Out of that 500K, you pay the 45K, you take some management fees, and maybe you set your organizational expenses even higher. Maybe you set them at like 60 or something because you have other costs that you got to sort of deal with. Those are all kind of bundled in. They get taken out of that. And then as new LPs come into your fund with future closings, and this is, again, another issue that we sort of identify, so sorry to go on a rant on this. So one of the other issues that we saw was that a law firm would basically do this quote, but they would include one closing. And so every single time you'd have to do a closing after that, okay, there's a legal cost involved in that, right? Because they got to check all your agreements and all that, so they would charge you for it, right? And so we said, this is stupid. Like, let's not get rid of this. So in the partners program, all the closings are basically included. And so what ends up happening is that you can start doing rolling closings. So it's like an LP comes in for 500K, 250 or whatever, boom, you get them in. Otherwise, you have to sort of bunch up, millions of dollars worth of stuff to kind of close, right? And so, back to kind of like the sort of like original question there is that as new LPs come in, okay, they get equalized, right? So like the 45K initially maybe is the first LPs that sort of pay for it, but by the time you're closed, it's just going to be a very small percentage of every single LP that's sort of in the fund, right? So that's how the organizational expense work.
We got another question here from Phil. Dillard is saying, you offer legal advisory, but we may already have legal counsel. Can this be disaggregated from the service or added to it? We need legal advisors who can help at different levels.
Yeah, good question, Phil. So you're right. You definitely have legal advisory at different levels. So you've got the legal advisory for the fund, and then you've got the legal advisory for like portfolio and all this other stuff, right? So look, the way I sort of think about it, Phil, are you before a first close or after a first close? Okay, if you're already gone and done a first close, so in other words, you've already had LPs that have subscribed to your docs and all that other stuff, that is what's called a migration. So we'd actually have to like do a huge audit on your fund to make sure that everything has been set up correctly. You don't have like weird conflict of interest and stuff like that. And we have to also get comfortable saying, hey, are we comfortable with this setup here and basically helping this fund be ultra successful for the next 10 years, right? So it's that all kind of factors into a migration. And in that case, yeah, obviously you kind of set it up the way you did, and there's not much we can do about it other than to figure out if we're sort of comfortable with that. And that's why there's a process for it. So that's like one side. Now, if you're pre-first close, the most likely scenario, Phil, is that you're probably going to fire your law firm. Okay, not for us. You're just going to come to this conclusion yourself, right? Because basically, the vast majority of law firms are not specialized in venture capital. Okay, but a lot of them claim to be, and this is a huge problem in the industry right now. Okay, so think of it like this. Okay, I don't know. You're about to have spine surgery, and you're going to have like, I don't know, your family office or your family doctor go out and start to like do like spine surgery on you. No, you can even use like an orthopedic surgeon for that, right? You need a very specialized spine surgeon to go out and do this stuff. And when that happens, right, and we see this all the time because most emerging managers, like I see there's another thing from Philly about like costs and stuff, like don't have any money or are like basically kind of broke, right? And so they're cutting corners wherever they can. And this is one of the areas where they cut corners. They may work with a law firm that doesn't specialize in a lot of this stuff. And so the problem with that is your legal costs will actually increase because you'll find out pretty quickly that a lot of the stuff that they've already set up, it's probably done incorrectly. They might have set up your fund with 2 entities instead of 3 because they were trying to cut corners. They may have set up the LPA to kind of be one of these 200-page documents like we talked about that makes it incredibly hard for you to subscribe LPs. They may have done things that you sort of not. So what most likely happens in this sort of scenario is that generally we basically end up like saying, hey, you're probably going to have to work within our structure for this to sort of work. We're open to making exceptions to this if you're sort of working with, like, again, a super sophisticated law firm like a Cooley and you have the actual partner, not some junior partner at Cooley or something that has sort of set this up for you. But then if you're at that level, you're looking at probably like 100K in just legal, right? And so it's kind of unlikely. And again, remember what we're doing here. The setup that you're doing here is for people that want to build enduring VC firms, right? This is going to be with you for the next 10 to 20 years, right? This is not something where you sort of are okay with sort of setting it up kind of and make compromises on the first fund, because by the time you get to fund 2 and you go into diligence with institutional LPs and all this stuff, all of the structure is going to like kind of fall apart and is going to actually cause diligence issues. So we have to get it done right from the first try, basically. That's sort of the approach.
Awesome. We have a question from Ayman Sakwani asking, do you have partners that have helped establish Sharia compliant VC funds?
So we actually have we just launched a fund that's Sharia compliant last week. But look, the Sharia compliance that generally happens based on like your strategy, right? And how you sort of think about this and who you accept as like LPs. You don't need that. I mean, you can add additional administration for this if you want, and that's not something that we have. People may add that on top of it, but generally that's managed by the general partner. It's not really done in the legal kind of stuff. It's usually not necessary to go to that level. All it does is, again, it introduces complexity, and hopefully you can sort of get from how passionate I am about like all the crap that's happening in this industry is like what we want to do is reduce complexity so we can make it easier for people to sort of invest and, do this the right way.
Yeah. There is a question, about economics, like, for smaller funds, there is not enough revenue to operate the fund and pay, the GP to support a personal balance sheet. Do you have solutions that help fund managers drive revenue that is complementary to the fund activities?
So no, because again, Phil, like put yourself in the position of a limited partner, right? So I'm going to go out and invest, or I'm going to have Phil manage my money for the next 15 years and do really well with it. Okay, that's a pretty big ask, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, you're gonna basically be managing my money, man. Like, you're a professional and money manager. Like, and so, I need to know that you're basically focused on this. Okay. And so generally when people start with small funds, which is fine, they go to fund 2 in 2 years. Okay, and that's gonna be bigger. Now you've got like stacking funds on top of each other. And as a matter of fact, most good LPs, that's why they want you to make sure you're building an enduring VC firm, because they know that if you can't raise a fund 2 or a fund 3, you're basically dead in the water, right? Like what's going to happen in year 10 when you basically don't have another fund or 2 or 3 paying management fees, okay? How are you going to get me that exit? How are you going to fight like hell to get me the money that I need when you're basically part-time somewhere in La La Land, like working on something else, right? And so when you're like, what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're setting your up firm to get to fund 2 and get to fund 3 and get to fund 4 as quickly as possible. So every 2 years or so, you're launching a new fund. And each of those funds are typically going to have much more and more AUM because now you're becoming more emerging, right? And so the way you sort of want to think about it, and the reason I'm telling you all this, Phil, is the way you want to think about this is that you're basically floating 2 years. Okay, so you've got a small fund, $2.5 million. You're right, that's not a lot of management fees, and just to really but that's only for 2 years. Okay, and so during that time, if you need to do some additional like consulting work to maybe like help you a little bit, you can, right? But just make sure that it's super aligned with what you're doing with the fund so that it doesn't distract you from basically managing the fund to the best of your abilities, from the best of your fiduciary abilities. Finally, as I mentioned, most of these costs, especially these operational costs, right? These are all basically floated or paid for by the LPs, right? They're not coming out of your management fees. So with your management fees, you basically are going to use it to basically like, try to earn a little bit of income and maybe pay some expenses that you need for the company.
Then we have a question from Daniel saying, I want to organize an ecosystem-related live event conference like this fall. Who should I connect with? Should I look for investors for it or start a fund? How should I do this? Thank you.
Well, I think the way you sort of want to think about this is you want to make sure that conferences are hard to do unless you have like a big draw. And really quickly, I actually just found this article. So I'm gonna put this in here. All right, everyone. So go ahead and go to this link if you sort of want to, if you want to take a look at the advice I just gave. I think it was Daniel or Phil. If the advice I gave Phil about sort of how the funds sort of stack up and you kind of make the management fees work, go to this article I just put in the chat. In order for you to do this well, you basically are going to need a big draw, right? So you're going to need some pretty famous like speakers or something like this so that you can bring them. So what I would do as a first step is I would try to see if I can organize some big speakers for that, right? And that you're going to have to sort of source through your network. Once you sort of have the speakers, now you have something you can put on like an events page or something like that to go out and sort of drive traffic to it. And you can use that to, find partnerships and whatever space, whatever you need. And then you're kind of ready to go. But if you sort of try to do these things out of order, you will probably struggle. So I would say the first step would be to find a good speaker or two.
Awesome. I have some questions here for VC Let me check here. Do you have an LP network and have facilities in Europe, EU zone?
So we work with like Daniel. Basically, what happens right now is most EU funds are domiciling in Delaware. Okay, it's just basically like Europe is really complicated place to operate as a VC manager. There's just lots of regulations, lots of issues. So basically, it forces people to try to raise these large funds, and most new and emerging managers don't have the capacity to raise those kind of funds, and like so none of this like works out. So what they end up doing is they end up just like launching in Delaware, at least for fund one. They build a little track record, and maybe in fund two they can raise a little bit more, and then they end up maybe coming back to Europe for that one. So that's sort of how you build that. We've launched lots of funds in Europe. We have lots of participating LPs in the LP Institute in Europe. We have employees in Europe who are big fans of Europe and all, but I just strategically, the way you sort of want to think about it is most of these new funds are going to be small, so you're probably going to do it in Delaware, most likely.
Awesome. There's a question here about domicile saying, if we sign up for Decile, does that mean that the fund is registered in the US, so no need to start it legally in Europe or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, look, what I would say to you, Yulia, is like, again, everyone here, if you're really early in your fundraising process, so in other words, you don't have at least $1 to $2 million in hard circled like letters of intent from LPs, don't spend any more time on this topic. Okay, you're like wasting your time, like talking to lawyers, looking at offerings like this, whatever. You're not ready for this. Like you start this process, understanding this process when you have like roughly 1 to 2 million in hard circled signed letters of intent from limited partners. Once you're at that phase, you can make a decision on where you're going to put the fund. So maybe a bunch of your LPs are asking you to put it in somewhere in Europe, then maybe you just put it in Europe. Or if a lot of your LPs are comfortable with Delaware, which most LPs are very comfortable with Delaware right now, it's the #1 venture market, you're going to put it in Delaware, right? I don't know if you caught the beginning of Pablo's presentation, but we operate the Decile Partners offering in Delaware, in Ontario, and in British Virgin Islands, BVI, so that we can sort of cover most of the world with those domiciles. But that decision should not be made until you have $1 or $2 million in signed, hard circled letters of intent.
So here we have a question. Is it a legal assistance to review investor agreements for each investment made by the fund?
So it's the way you want to think about this. So what does deal review do? What deal review does is that they review every single one of your term sheets that comes in, your deal memos, cap tables, whatever you have, right? And they sort of map those against kind of like the standard documentation, and they'll redline it. So for example, the other day, they caught a convertible note that was converting into common instead of preferred, right? Which is kind of a problematic issue for a lot of folks, right? And so they went to the GP and had them fix it, right? And so that's what deal review does. Okay, they're not investment advisors, they're not even really legal advisors, right? But what they're doing is it's essentially what if any of you were at scale right now and you had an actual firm with like employees in it, which again is really hard to do if you're like small and don't have the money in the fund. You would have associates basically doing this work for you, right? So we're sort of taking over that function so that we can help you become really successful at your craft, because it's so critical for you to do well in Fund 1 so that you can have a really good fundraise in Fund 2, and then you can have a really good fundraise in Fund 3, right? The whole point of this is to get you to Fund 3, right? And so that's what this is. They're like basically watching over you to make sure that, you know, you understand exactly what you're about to get involved with. Now, if there's a super, super complicated, I don't know, preferred conversion from your safe to at the Series A to like a price round, yeah, at that point you probably want to have a law firm look at that, right? But think about all the expenses and that deal review helped you sort of save up until that point, right? Before that, you would just hire the law firm right at the beginning, right? And so that's the whole point, you know, like we want to sort of help you be successful at your craft versus like servicing an account.
I think we reached top of the hour. I don't think there's like, I think we covered most of the questions, so I think we can get to it here. Thank you so much. We had a large audience today, and it was very exciting to have our first open event for Decile Partners and get such level of interest and great questions. So we will be following up with many of you that have asked for materials and requests. So we will be sending those back to you. We will be replying via email. And just wish you a great rest of the day and see you soon in Decile Partners. Thank you guys. Thanks so much.
Bye everyone. Hopefully this was helpful for everybody. Bye.